There's the age-old saying that things are not always what they seem. Decades may have passed since this case was opened and just as quickly closed, with an arrest within hours, a trial before supper, and an execution with Old Sparky within 83 days. The courts are not known for their speed, but in 1944, the trial in Alculu, South Carolina, began and ended in near record time. It certainly wasn't the only sad and painful record broken with this case, one that 70 years later would finally be given a second look. Well, before we get started, we have quite a few new tacos on our Patreon page that I want to shout out and welcome. We've got Megan, we've got Regina, we've got Jeremy, we've got Tori, and Corey.
Wow.
And let me just say, most of these are the $10, or we had one, Regina, who wanted a custom pledge and go above that. Whoa. So we
a big spender.
Yeah. So I think we're gonna have to start doubling up soon with our surprise shots, and do maybe more than one dedicated surprise shot.
How many
episode.
are we in the hole?
We are like 6 in the hole right now, so we're a little backed up. So I think perhaps starting next week, if we do, if it's a Saturday night, we'll feel comfortable doing 2.
2, 3.
No.
As long as we're not mixing liquor, I think we'll be okay, because that last one where we did that,
brutal.
That was the worst hangover I've had in a long time.
Yeah, that was not fun. But y'all gotta request what you want us to take. So far, I do have a request. Rachel gave us a good surprise shot request. So otherwise, if we don't get them, we're just going to pick the shots ourselves. So tonight's shot will be dedicated to Rachel.
Surprise shots, surprise shots. We don't know what they are because they're a surprise. Thanks, Rachel.
I can tell by the brightness of this green.
I swear to God, this better not be absinthe.
No, absinthe is a different color.
Yeah, it's more of like a chartreuse.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Cheers.
Cheers.
That's good.
Midori.
All right, so for you tacos, our Supremos and our small tacos.
And our nachos.
Our nacho tacos. We are doing a couple Patreon episodes this week for you. One's really short, but it tugs at my heartstrings. I've been following this case for several months now, and I want you guys to help me find a missing person.
Ooh.
Or something that is missing. Jen, can you read this headline for us? This is a story we're going to be covering for Patreon.
Obese monkey, Uncle Fatty, who became a star after who became a star after being sent to fat camp, is missing and feared dead after falling off the wagon. John, where'd you get this picture of me?
Let me see him.
I'll put that on the screen for you. Hold on.
No. Oh my gosh. That's real. That's not photoshopped.
No, that's real. There's another big monkey called Chunky Monkey. He's even bigger.
I feel
he's
like
still in fat camp, though.
I feel like you could easily switch out Monkey and Uncle Fatty and my name in that headline. It would still be accurate.
Why would you say that? Listen to this. This is also from the Sun. Look at this bad boy. Oh my God. Read that one. Look how big that guy is.
Chunky Monkey, obese monkey Godzilla, found gorging on junk food at Thai market, is being sent to fat camp after ballooning to twice its size.
Look at it.
Oh my God.
He's huge. He's like twice as big as the other one.
Oh my God.
I feel you, buddy. Oh.
But I'm...
Like, what do they do at monkey fat camp?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I don't know, but we need to figure out what happened to Uncle Fatty. And with you Patreon guys,
He's so cute.
look forward to that this week because I'm going to be diving pretty deep into Uncle Fatty's whereabouts.
I'm really excited.
Yes.
I hope we find Uncle Fatty.
Also,
Alive.
yeah, that is a Patreon episode. Also,
Is it possible that he lost so much weight that nobody recognizes him?
no. So the little
Oh, they think he fell off the wagon.
research I've done.
I wonder if he
Not
actually fell off.
literally.
I wonder if he actually fell off a wagon. Oh my god.
No, so he was stealing food from. He's not even like the elder monkey, and he's stealing food from his peers. So I think they killed him.
Oh. Like people or other monkeys?
Other monkeys.
Other monkeys.
Oh, well, that's sad.
And also, I'm going to be covering the case of Alexis Sharkey. Have you heard of her? She is an Instagram influencer who, there's some new developments in the case. She went missing and her body was now found. And it's so that's a pretty popular case. And I want to do that one for you guys on Patreon, similar to the Bianca Devins one that we did for you guys a long time ago. So be sure to look forward to that. And for our tacos, thank you so much for supporting us.
Fabulous.
You know what else is fabulous? These drinks.
it is quite good, right?
Yeah, like I could probably drink another one.
We can make that happen.
Yes. So the hint tonight was maypop.
Which I had to look up what that maypop was.
What is a maypop?
Well, tell me.
It's
What do you-
apparently a fruit.
Yeah, it's a
Oh,
fruit.
okay.
Very similar to the passion fruit.
Yeah, it's in the same family.
But it's like it grows in South America, I want to say. So,
Well, it grows here.
Oh, does it?
Yeah, in South Carolina. So,
Oh.
yeah, it's a southern wild fruit, and it's called the maypop because it blossoms in May, and it grows on a vine. So it's like a sweet fruit, and it grows on a vine, so they kind of dangle down towards the ground, and if you step on them, they pop.
Oh.
So the maypop, that's what they're called.
Okay, I've never heard of them before.
me neither. I would want to see if we can find them in a grocery store, maybe.
You know what? Passion fruit makes me think of that Drake song, though. It's so good. Passion from miles away. Passion with the things you say.
Well, this is the Maypop Mimosa, which called for Meyer lemon juice, which you can't just like buy Meyer lemon juice, I believe.
You have to juice a Meyer lemon.
Yes. So what I did instead was took some orange juice and lemon juice and married those together because Meyer lemon kind of has an orangey flavor. And then added some passion fruit juice and some champagne.
It's delicious.
It is very refreshing.
All right, guys, let's get started with tonight's story. This is Talk Murder to Me podcast. If you're new here, I put all my sources, photos.
Photos from the rodeos.
Put all my photos, videos, and sources on talkmurder.com. There's a lot of good stuff on this blog post, so be sure to go there. Leave me a comment. I read all those comments and share the post if you don't mind. Alternatively, if you wait till Wednesday, we put out the YouTube videos. We are streaming this episode live. Well, not as live for us, but we'll put the episode out on Wednesdays from now on for the YouTube.
YouTube.
You can see my pretty face there, and Jen and Nicole's also there.
Acne covered spot mess.
So tonight, the hint I gave was Maypop. We're actually going about an hour and a half east of here. Wait, west from here. East would be
I was
the
gonna say the ocean.
Never eat soggy waffles. We're going west.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
I don't think I've ever heard about that.
Never eat soggy waffles.
News.
I just always...
News. That's boring.
Well, west, east, we.
Okay.
Or never eat soggy waffles.
I mean, I don't have an issue with north and south as much as sometimes I do with east and west.
I have a problem with north and south only because I'm so used to saying like going down or going up, and now
I'm
like,
terrible at that,
southern
too.
with that. But like as far as location wise, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
It's just as far as like they're coming down. It's like no, they're.
I do
going
that too.
up.
I do that too. I feel you.
All right, so tonight we're going to Alcolu, Alcolu,
In South Carolina?
In South Carolina. And for you guys on YouTube, here is the Google Earth video. So we're going almost where we are. We're in Charleston. So right in the center. It's really close to where I grew up. Alcolu.
So it's like a little northeast of Columbia?
No, yeah, exactly. Well, east. It's right east of Columbia. I actually grew up around these parts. So you see it's nothing but bare land.
A lot of farm area.
A lot of farm areas. This is kind of where I grew up. And here's the Baptist Church. So keep this one in mind. This is the Green Hill Baptist Church. It still is standing today. If you go about 300 yards away from that, which I'm going to show you right now, is where the story actually starts. Right there in that bushy area, you see the briars and all that. Now, it looked completely different from today, from this Google Earth video, as it did on March 23rd, 1944.
Oh, wow. That was March 23rd, which is just on Tuesday.
Yeah.
That's my sister's birthday.
This is Clarendon County, and I actually couldn't find a map, even an old-timey map, of where this is. So, but luckily we have Google Earth. So who you're looking at now, if you want to describe her, this is Betty June Binnicker. How old do you think she is?
6.
I'm going to say like 9.
Close. She's 11 years old.
Oh.
And right here is her best friend and neighbor. Her name is Mary Emma Thames, spelled just like the river in
England.
In England, Thames.
Okay.
So a lot of people would think it was Thames, but it's actually spelled Thames, or pronounced Thames. How old is she? And she's the one there on the right.
I'm guessing around the same age, 10 or 11?
Yes.
6.
She's 7 years old. So can you describe these girls for us? These are the victims tonight.
They are Caucasian young girls with pale skin, darker hair, like maybe I think they're both brunettes. Kind of hard to tell with the
Like
sepia
shoulder
toned
length
photos.
They're country girls, right? That's how they look.
Sure.
I mean, they
Looks
got
like
the
one's in front of a
overalls.
house, the other one's in the field, looks like.
So just normal girls. They were best friends. One's 11, one is 7 years old. They were actually neighbors, and they had a hobby when school was out. Their mother would let them go pick
Maypops.
maypops. There you go. Now, maypops, if you don't know, if you're not from the South, are these things right here.
Oh.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
these are called maypops. They blossom in May. And when you step on them, they can pop. They make a popping sound.
Almost looks like a pomegranate, like how they
It does. Yeah, little kernels almost.
inside.
So March 23rd, 1944, this is a Friday.
Okay.
School lets out at 3 p.m. The girls get home, and they decide to go pick maypops. But they promise their mother that they'll be back in 30 minutes because supper, in the South is around 4:35. So they got to be back by that time, 30 minutes.
Okay.
No more, no less. So the two of the girls, the 11 and the 7-year-old, they start walking up the dirt road. And in the Google Earth video I showed you, you saw a paved road. There's nothing like that back then. It was all dirt. There's no paved roads anywhere. It's dirt. So they start
40s,
walking up the road. The mother gives them a pair of scissors because you actually cut the maypop because it's on a vine. And they were supposed to be back in 30 minutes. Now, what you're looking at now is right across from the church that I just showed you on Google Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is the area that the bodies were found.
Looks a little swampy.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it was back in the day. Now, it didn't look anything like this today. You couldn't even see past the bushes. It was all trees and,
Okay. It was
grown
like
over.
jungle.
Exactly. Now it's a soybean field behind there. But the two girls, they're the victims tonight. They're found both murdered because they didn't come home in 30 minutes right there in that depressed area that you see.
Yep.
But that is the general area of where they were. 300 yards behind the Green Hill Baptist Ministry Church, in a briar patch lay the two girls. Now, they were actually found around 7 a.m. the next morning, which was a Saturday.
Okay.
So here's kind of how it goes down. They leave at 3:30. All right, Mom, we'll be back in 30 minutes. She gives them some scissors. They go out, both the girls, they're walking, even though one of them has a bicycle, which is extremely important in this case.
Okay.
And from what I saw, evidence is lacking in this case, but there was only one bicycle. So one of them was pushing the bicycle, the other one was just walking. And
Okay.
you see that in old movies,
Yeah.
they do that stuff. So that is what was going on. 30 minutes goes by, neither of the girls show back up at the house. So the mother immediately gets worried and tells her husband. The husband tells the neighbor, and eventually within an hour, there's 150 people searching
150 people.
Yeah, everyone in town. This is a small town.
Okay.
Even today, Alkulu only has 458 residents. So back then, the entire town.
That's fast, though, to get 150 people together.
Yeah,
but
and you
Yeah.
would have to think that perhaps the murderer is there
is
searching for them.
one of
Well, they don't know
them-
it's a murderer yet. These girls could have fell down a hill. They could have been struck by like a coyote or something like that, whatever.
Right, but in retrospect.
Yeah, in retrospect. So they're just searching for the girls. They're probably lost,
Could be.
Yeah.
Around 7 a.m. that Saturday morning, one of the searchers, his name is Scott Loader, Lowder. He noticed some footprints in the soil, and it rained the night before, so the footprints are kind of deep and impressioned into the soil. And he also sees the scissors that the mother gave Betty June Binnicker to cut the thing, and they're just laying on the ground.
And were the footprints child-size footprints or adult-size footprints?
That's a really good question, and nobody knows because that is
Oh.
lost to history.
Huh.
But keep that in mind. That's a really good question.
Okay.
The footprints in the damp soil, now this isn't a briar patch. He sees the scissors, and he moves the briars out the way, and obviously you guys know what he finds.
Mm-hmm.
Lying face up, side by side, placed there intentionally, were the two girls. You have Betty June Binnicker, 11 years old, and Mary Thames, 7 years old. They're placed beside each other. They're face up in a shallow water. It rained the night before, so think 2-3 inches max of water. They're not completely submerged, but they are in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And Binnicker's bicycle, the one that, you remember they had one bicycle when they walked up the dirt road? That bicycle, the front wheel was detached and placed on top of her body.
Oh, no.
They think the bicycle was placed on top of her body almost like to conceal. Maybe they won't see this, so there's a bike here. They're not going to see a body type of thing. No one knows why the bicycle was placed there.
Okay, well, it sounds like we can deduce, though, that the footprint then was the person who placed them there, because that wasn't the scene of the crime.
Yeah.
There was no struggle there. The bike was placed on top of them, so
Also-
the footprint had to have been.
They may have been putting the bike there to, hide the body, but don't you think that if you're walking in a briar field and you find a bike, you're like, oh, look, a bike. And then you're like, oh, no, bodies. Or
That's a good point.
maybe that was their intent.
I don't know, and we may never know. But immediately the town people, this has never ever happened in this town ever. You have two other, and there's not many little girls running around, 150 people, you know what I'm saying? So everyone knew the Binnicker girl, everyone knew the Thames girl. They knew they went picking maypops. Everyone's seen them. Like, who would do this in such a small population? And it is someone in town, obviously, because this is in 1944. You don't just drive around because you want to go visit places.
Right.
Like, that is a whole thing to drive, especially down these old dirt roads. So they knew it as someone in town. They also know it's a homicide because, unlike a suicide or anything else, there's obvious trauma and pretty bad trauma to the head where they have both been beaten. In fact, through the medical examiner. He says, quote, they had been beaten about the head, end quote. Some old-timey words there. Now, let me talk about the condition of their bodies. Binnicker, the 11-year-old, her head was crushed in several different places in the back. So the back of her skull was completely fractured. So not like, you know how you fracture it, maybe it cracks a couple things.
No, I don't know, but
it was literally in 100 pieces. So obviously someone attacks her in the back of the head unless they pushed her head on a log and just slammed it on there. At 11 years old, the skull's not fully formed, I know, but Thames, the 7-year-old, her face was, quote, beaten beyond recognition.
Oh my God.
End quote. However, and I'll get into this later, but, and I know they're in water, but there's an absence of blood, which usually means what?
They were beaten after they were killed? Is that where you're going with that?
That's a really good point, and they didn't think of that back then. And I'm glad you brought that up because I didn't even think of that.
But they were beaten somewhere else.
Usually, yeah. Usually people would think they were beaten somewhere else. Now, there is supposed to be an excess amount of blood because in the head area, the scalp, there's a lot of blood vessels up there.
Yeah.
So when you get beaten on the head, that's when you see blood splatter everywhere. So the fact that there was absence of blood, and that's a really good point you brought up because I didn't even think of that. They could have been strangled and then killed, and then or strangled and then beat. If that were the case, there would not be an excess of blood because the heart's not going, it's not pushing the blood out.
Right.
That's a really good point. I didn't think of that.
Good job, Nicole.
However,
3 years of doing this, I learned a few things.
Actually, that point is really good for this story because nobody has thought of that, I don't think. The story that we're telling tonight, there is a shockingly not a lot of evidence, or not evidence, paperwork, and which is normal because they didn't have hard drives or whatever. Like I have like 7 terabyte hard drive that I'm saving these videos to, like that. They didn't have that. They had a file cabinet that would take probably, I don't know, like 100 gigabytes. Well, that was stupid because it's not
pieces of paper.
100 pieces of paper. So they got to basically burn those to make way for new cases.
I also wonder if maybe there was a lack of resources. You said this was in 1944, so this is still during World War II.
Yeah, there you go.
So I'm wondering if maybe the best folks who were on the police force were actually serving in the military at the time.
That's another really good point, Nicole.
Thank you.
You're on it tonight.
Yes.
Yeah, so this was right before Hitler surrendered, right? 1944. This was March 23rd. When did he surrender? April?
45,
it was in 45.
Right?
Oh, 1945.
April or May of 1945.
Yeah, so this was right before that. So this case probably didn't make, I mean, it made the news, obviously, but not the front page.
Well, that's what else is, it just strikes me about the time. Like, probably all of the young men, they were serving at that time.
Yeah. Now, one of the search party men that pulled out the 2 girls. Now, keep in mind, this is 7 a.m. Saturday the next day. They went maypop picking on the 23rd of March, Friday, right after school. School
Starting
bell
the
rings.
Weekend, yeah.
Yeah. The mom gives them the scissors. You better be back before supper. We'll be back 30 minutes, Mom. They walk, and then they're never seen again. So the search party conducts itself. They form up, and it takes them almost 12 hours to find the girls. Okay.
So also interesting, the fact that this is during World War II, the population of this town is smaller, so the pool, like, obviously people who are overseas serving anyway, they're not suspects, but, like, do you know what I'm trying to say? Like, the people who could have done the crime were probably
smaller.
not men 18 to 40. You know what I mean? For the most part, it must have been someone
Unless those people in those that were around were ineligible to serve.
Right. Something like that.
So how far away was where they were found?
Still in the town. It was near the church.
Right by the church. 300 yards behind the church is where they're found in that briar patch.
Right. And where is that in conjunction to where they lived?
That's a good question. Not as good as the questions Nicole's been asking, but
Hey,
I'll take it. I'll take a compliment when I can get it.
We're on a roll tonight.
So they are a couple blocks away, we'll say. So they could yell, their mom could yell really loud and they could hear, but
Ring the dinner bell.
She can't see them because they're a couple blocks away. Now there's shrubbery and stuff, trees and everything else that wasn't there, or that was there that's not there currently.
But it took 12 hours to find.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, there's no helicopters, no search dogs or anything. I mean, it's literally they split up in groups and then they walk. And then they were in a briar patch, which, I mean, they didn't think they were murdered. That's the last thing they're thinking of. They thought they were lost. So the last place to look is in a briar patch.
Well, I think you would still, if you're 2 blocks away and you have 150 people looking and you start at the home, you don't think it would take 12 hours to get to that briar patch. So maybe whoever was looking was involved, like I mentioned before, and they had time to move the body to a briar patch. Because 12 hours in a 2-block radius is not, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but also that's a long time to go 2 blocks.
That's a good point. But I also remember, but this isn't like the open land. This is all trees, all woods, all forest.
Okay.
I remember looking for someone. I was in North Carolina and I was in a specialized training environment, and there was this kid that ultimately got bit by some kind of snake, and we were looking for him, and it was probably about the same. It was a couple mile radius, which isn't that much because we had, all of us soldiers. And, we were making pretty good speed, but it still took us 2 days to find them. I mean, because there's so much briars and brush everywhere, and they're not decomposed yet. You're not smelling them. You don't have a search dog. You're basically getting lucky, and they wouldn't even have seen them if it wasn't for that weird footprint, because there was no drag marks either. So if they were killed somewhere else,
they were carried.
There you go. That's another.
Yeah. Now looking back,
detective.
Holy shit.
Now looking back, when we were looking for my golf club that split in half, we were only looking behind the fence, and we never found it.
Shoot. Good point. Yeah.
So,
and it couldn't have gotten that far.
No, I saw the area that it went to, and we looked back there 3 or 4 times.
I looked back there 3 or 4 times.
I went too.
You did not.
Yes, I did.
Do it in the back.
You did.
I was in the shit
that day. But I went a few times. A couple days later, when it was sunny and not so wet.
When it was sunny, so I went out there in the pouring rain.
I wasn't playing golf in the pouring rain.
All right.
I've yet to use that training tool since, because I'm not messing up the driver I have now. Let's just say
it probably flung over and killed some kid.
No,
maybe that's why we found the bikes.
Yeah, knocked the kid off the bike.
All right, one of the teenagers that was helping search for the 2 girls, his name now, after he grew up, is Mr. Francis Baston. Now, this guy later becomes a Baptist minister, and he is a part of the search party. They actually told him to go home when he finds the body, because he's a teenager. They don't want him seeing this, because, I mean, these bodies were badly mangled. I mean, for such a small town and 2 small girls, you know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, it doesn't really matter how small the town is. The fact that a child was beaten to death violently is terrible.
So this is what he says. This is an exact quote from Mr. Baston.
One of the fellows in our group discovered the bodies and said he thought he heard one of them breathing, so I went down in there and pulled them out of the ditch. Of course, they were already stiff. I lifted them out and laid them on the embankment, along with the bicycle. I was 15 at the time, and the older men told me to go home, so I did.
All right, so now let's go over one of the few pieces that's left of this case, the autopsy report.
Okay.
Which I'm so glad that the Historical Society saved all this stuff, that they could at least. But this is the autopsy of both of the girls. You don't have to read it because it's hard to read, but I'm going to go over each girl separately.
Okay.
Now, I'll put all of these sources on talkmurder.com, definitely, because I want to save all these for my own records as well, because this is a case right down the road, you know. Anyway, the medical examiner is Dr. A.C. Bozard, M.D. Also accompanying him was a Dr. Baker. Dr. Baker is a family physician, okay, which will kind of become important later down the road. So keep in mind, he's not a registered forensic pathologist or anything. He's a family, like you go to freaking doctor's care or whatever, that's the guy working. Anyway, this is the autopsy report, and I'm going to read the summary. The 7-year-old, Mary Emma Thames, long laceration, about 2 inches, right above the right eyebrow. Another vestigial, I guess that's the word for cut, on the forehead above the left eyebrow. Both jagged and deep. Deep inside the... Deep as in whoever did this used a lot of force.
And the scissors that the girls took for the maypop.
That's a really good point, but the scissors, they didn't have any blood on them or anything. That's not the murder weapon.
Oh.
But that is a good point, you know, because they did have a method to fight back with the scissors. But then again, they're 7 years old. Like, what are they going to kill someone, you know what I'm saying? Anyway, both of those were jagged and deep. Another hole going straight through the cranial cavity on the forehead. So, and these are the exact words, and these are the exact words of the autopsy report. So they're using words like hole going through the cranial cavity. What I'm trying to say is there's a lot of force behind whoever's doing this. The frontal bone right here on your forehead is, quote, definitely broken, end quote. And all of this is quoted. I'm just emphasizing on what I think is important. These injuries look as they've been caused by a hammer. And you'll see from the next victim here that the way they could tell is it has almost like a circular indentation, you know, with the tip of the hammer. Punched out fracture of the skull. I've never seen that word before. Punched out. So the skull was actually like cracked and kind of leaning out of the skin. No signs of cyanosis, which means the child was dead before she was submerged in the water. No bruises or discoloration about the genitalia, and the hymen was intact. Miss Betty June Binnicker, 11 years old. Evidence of at least 7 blows to the head of the child with a blunt instrument. A small round head puncture about the size of a hammer. Now, he's not saying that the murder weapon is a hammer. Keep that in mind.
Right.
Nobody's saying the murder weapon is a hammer. He is just giving a best guess of what it is.
Something that's comparable to a hammer.
Yeah. Some of her skull was cracked, which means she was hit extremely hard as well. And she had 2 blows that fully punched holes inside of her skull. So whoever's doing this, or whoever did this, number one, it's not suicide, it's not an accident. Like this is some crazy stuff going on. Now, I do want to point out that Alkalu, which I can barely even say, was the main employer there was a lumber mill by D.W. Alderman. That was the lumber mill. So if you think of Alkalu, because that's not even a real name. So basically, it's the first name of the lumber guy is Alderman, and then Co. So Alco, right? And then it was something like Lu. The last one's for Lula. it was like a friend or something. So Alcula, I can't even say it. They need to change the name. It's so odd. That's not a South Carolina name.
It's just hard to say.
It's not even like a Native American name. It's just so, it's a made
That's
up.
interesting that I came from a business name.
Yeah.
So
Alculu.
and then Lula. It's hard to say and for anyone in South Carolina, so I don't feel that bad.
Yeah.
Oh, so we're not finished with hers. I actually wanted you to read this part of the medical examiner because it is really important about how hard she was hit.
The back of the skull is nothing but a mass of crushed bones.
That is the exact wordage that the medical examiner used.
So I do have a question, and I know that it could probably be ruled out very quickly based on the medical examiner's report. But where they were found was a little swampy, and they were found in water. I know that there was no like bite marks, but are there like gators out there? Like could
have Gator ever done this?
Like chomped them? I'm not trying to be insensitive. Like I
No,
know
it's
that
not an insensitive question. It's just
doesn't
because I
make
mean
sense.
they were beaten about the head, and that was it. I mean,
Is it the circular thing?
If it was like all across their body, like if a gator is going to get you, it's not just going to bite you in the head. Number one, it's going to eat you.
Oh yeah,
and split you in half because it does the death roll. And number two, it's not just going to bite you on the head. I mean, it's a good question. And
I don't know. Now that after I asked it, I don't think it was a good question. It was kind of a dumb
maybe
question.
not gators. I don't think gators are out there, but coyotes or something.
Something that could have forcefully penetrated the skull.
I think the
hammer.
It seems like a hammer. So I don't know if that could have been done by an animal.
Yeah.
No, it's not a bad question, but because it also brings up the point that there was no other, marks on the body, if that makes sense.
So were they strangled?
This is the autopsy
know.
report. It doesn't say anything about that. But, I mean, this is 1944. I don't even think they had the capillary technique that they have now. So, I'm not a pathologist or anything, but they can tell if you're strangled because these little eye bubbles or whatever, they're a certain way, a certain redness or whatever. In 1944, they probably didn't even know that stuff. The only way they can tell if you're strangled is if you had like bruises around your neck.
Ligature marks.
You know what I'm saying? Or something like that. But I don't know. There's nothing in this autopsy report, though, that says they were strangled. It goes on to say there's plenty of damage to the head, this is important, slight edema of the external genitalia, and slight bruise was present on the right side of the genitalia, even though her hymen was also intact. So take a guess of maybe what that can mean. She had a bruise there.
Well, either she could have been abused at home, or she was abused, but it was not. Maybe it could have been fingers, or it wasn't.
No, that's a good point. Most likely, from what the detectives surmised and stuff, it's because she was the one riding the bike. And I guess, the bike,
true.
especially back then, man, like a bike in the 40s, like it's not like that bike I have now with a super padded seat and shit. This is probably just
that bike seat's got good
uncomfortable shit ever, Yeah. So, I mean, most likely that. There was no scratch marks or bruises down there. It was just that one little bruise that could have been caused from the bike.
Good point. Okay.
Now, keep in mind, later in this story, a couple things. The bike, the front wheel was taken off completely.
Weird. Okay.
And placed on top of her, remember? Okay. And from what I've seen, there's only one bike.
Well, maybe only one of them could afford a bike, Like there is a...
I mean, you always see the old movies, one
yeah.
kid's pushing the other ones,
And it's maybe because only one of them can afford it.
Now, did the bike wheel, you know how like the spigots in the bike, they all come together and there's usually like a round part in the middle of the bike
The
wheel?
yoke? Is that what it's called? No,
I don't know what it's called, but maybe could that have been the weapon?
No.
Interesting.
I'm just trying to figure out.
That's an interesting thought.
All right, well, let's move on because we got the killer.
Okay.
So I just, let's move on.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
This is the killer right here. If you want to describe him for us.
He's a child.
How old do you think he is?
12.
Probably 11, 12. Yeah.
He's 14 years old.
Oh, he looks so young.
So what do you think his destination was in life after this?
I mean, life in prison. I mean, but for
In
14,
1944?
for being 14, though, like that doesn't add up for any of the other cases that we've done.
For murdering 2 girls in the South for an African American boy in the 40s.
There you go. So we're and I'm talking about this in a second, but we're still in the Jim Crow era here in the 40s. I'm gonna kind of gloss over that, and this is in no way a racial episode, but this is a South Carolina story that is widely known for South Carolinians, and I've always wanted to do it. And there's actually some recent developments in the case.
Really?
Okay.
70 years has passed.
I mean, in modern time, like we just did a case where the girl was 12 years old and she was out within 10 years, right?
Huh?
That was in Canada, though.
Yeah.
Are
Well,
you talking about
we
Jasmine Richardson?
know. Yeah.
Yeah. That's in Canada.
Yeah. Well, I know
In
it's in
2000s.
Canada,
Yeah.
but I'm also just saying, like, it's.
Did you guys know that Virginia just recently banned the death penalty, and they're the
I
first
did
state
not.
in the South to do so?
I did not know that.
I didn't know that. We'll be the last. All right, so this is George Stinney Jr. He is a 14-year-old African-American boy, and I'm going to get into the racial, societal makeup of the time because that is extremely important for this case. Now, Miss Frankie Dyches, Dyches, which is Betty June Binnicker's niece. Niece. So she was born after.
Oh, posthumously.
Yeah, so
Okay,
Betty June Binnicker's sister's daughter.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is who we're talking about.
Got it.
So she was born after this happened. But
I needed that because, yeah.
yeah, sorry. Anyway, this is what she says about George Stinney Jr. Quote, he was a bully and he had a very short fuse, end quote. Mr. W.L. Hamilton, which was the teacher for George Stinney Jr. in 7th grade, said the following, quote, I remember the day he killed those children. He got into a fight with a girl at school who was his neighbor. In those days, you didn't have to worry about children carrying guns and knives to school, but George carried a little knife and he scratched this child with the knife, end quote. Now, there's 2 sides to this, to his personality, because his own family would claim that he was a very shy and mild-mannered youth. He had no interest in girls whatsoever, and he was actually an artist, an accomplished artist for his time. You know, he would carry a little pad and a pencil that his mom gave him, and every time an airplane flew by, he would quickly trace it, and it would look pretty good.
Wow. He looks very disconnected in that photo.
Does he look like a killer?
No, I mean, he looks like a kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's inmate 260.
But he looks like he doesn't care. I don't like. There's something not connecting. It looks. You know what I mean?
He actually confessed to police, and at
He
least
did.
Yeah, no, he
Okay.
confessed. Yeah, so and I'm going to tell you kind of what happened, but he confesses to police. At least one officer was there. Like I said, records are kind of non-existing for this case. Anyway, from what we do know, there was one officer there, a Clarendon County Sheriff, Deputy H.S. Newman. Now, his confession was this. It was actually one story, and then it was a final story. The story initially was he followed the girls. Well, not followed the girls. He saw one of the girls fall down into the ditch. He tried to get her out. She thought he was making a move on her, and she started to hit him. Then he picked up a railroad spike and a piece of iron, like an iron bar, the first thing he could find, and he hit her in the head with it. He didn't mean to kill her. She goes unconscious. The other one trying to scream, run away. He didn't know what to do. He just hit her too. Okay, that was the first tale. The second confession was he wanted to have sex with Betty June Binnicker. Remember, she was bruised on the right side of her genitalia. All right. However, the 7-year-old Mary Thames begin to protest. So he grabs the first thing he could. He hits the 7-year-old right there with a piece of iron. She gets knocked unconscious, and then he kills both of them, like what we talked about. Now, he claims that he didn't mean to kill the girls, but he did beat them pretty badly. And the murder weapon which is now lost to history, was either a piece of iron or a railroad spike. All right, any questions?
I mean, that would match the wounds.
What made him change his story?
Well,
it's interesting. It's not like terribly different.
Because you always try to go in there and make it like it's not your fault. I was trying to help her out. And then the detective's like, no, come on, we see through that. Okay, I was trying to have sex with her, but, then she tried to attack me type of thing. So maybe like that. This is from the deputy sheriff, if you want to read this.
The deputy sheriff said George Stinney Jr. gave this account of the killings. He came upon the children near the Alderman lumber mills where they had gone to pick flowers about 3 p.m. He made advances to the younger girl, a first-grade pupil, and she fought him off. When the girls said that they intended to tell their parents, he picked up a railroad trestle spike about a foot long and struck the younger girl several times in the head. The older girl attempted to help her little friend, and Stinney also said he felled her with the spike. Taken into custody several hours after the bodies were found, Stinney led officers to a spot nearby where he said he had concealed the spike.
So, after he confesses to the deputy, he actually takes them to the exact location. Now, this is really important. You remember it rained the night before, and they were found in a mud puddle.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He says, I threw the murder weapon down there. The deputy reaches down into the puddle, into a muddy puddle where you can't see anything. You can't see a spike down there. Reaches right down where George Stinney Jr. said it was, and he pulls out an iron rod. The murder weapon, which now lost to history.
Okay.
Yeah. No, there's nobody knows what the murder weapon was because, this is a small town. They didn't really take things too seriously, I guess. But he pulls out the murder weapon, the one that he used to kill the girls with. I'm pretty sure, guys, and I'll put this photo on talkmurder.com. This case is... There's a movie made about this, and there's all kind of misinformation, but I tried my damnedest to figure out if this is his house. I believe this was the house he grew up in. If it's not, I apologize, but I couldn't find a definite, but this house keeps coming up under his name from all these other websites. So I'm saying that this was the house he was in. Now, obviously, it looked a lot better back then.
Right.
This is current day. So here's where we're at. He confesses this is the Saturday morning after they find the girls because 2 deputies come to his house, which is the house right here. They take him away. All right. So they're at this house right now, and another local who was a part of the search party, his name was Paul Fann, Fann. His family provided the ice around town because there's no refrigerators back then. So he was talking about how if you're going to buy ice, kind of like when you buy it Harris Teeter or something, but you would buy ice either in 100-pound, 50-pound, or 25-pound, and they would cut it right there. That's what you use the ice picks for. Yeah, it's kind of cool because they would just get it in the truck, this big thing of ice, and they would cut it for you. How much you want?
Did you know that my dad did ice sculptures?
No.
Mm-hmm.
Was he good at it?
Yeah.
Too bad he couldn't do one for your wedding.
He was, I think it's like he was on the front page of the Boston Globe with him, with a chainsaw doing ice sculptures.
That's
back
cool.
when he was working in hotels. Not cool.
How long do those things last?
Made some, because we used to order ice, not me, but the town of New Bedford for their first night used to order them.
Do they last?
They used to do, it's obviously it's in the dead of winter. So yeah, they would do it I think it was they did it for first night in Boston.
But what is first night?
It's New Year's Eve. It's like a New Year's Eve, and
party.
They would do
walk around
a whole bunch of ice sculptures.
Now, according to Mr. Fann, now he was a child at the time, but this is what he recalls about the police showing up and pulling George Stinney Jr. away. Now, I want to say also they pulled his brother away, which he was an older, I believe he was 17 at the time. He was just there for the night. His name was Johnny. He was going to the army the next day. But they pulled him away too, the both of them, and this is what the one of the search party members says, Mr. Fan.
They came out, and there was an officer holding each arm. Mr. Fan said, I don't recall seeing handcuffs, but they might have had his hands cuffed. But I know that there was a man on each side of him holding him by the arm. There was another man, I don't know who he was, who came out carrying a ball of clothing. I don't know who he was speaking to, but I heard him say that he was carrying the bloody clothes George had been wearing at the time the girls were killed. I never saw any blood, but they found the clothes buried in a shallow hole near the back corner of the house. So were they actually bloodied?
Well, remember, there was no blood near the body.
Yeah.
We don't know. It's not like they saved the clothes. Let's recap. 2 girls, bicycle, dirt road, walking down the street, scissors to cut the maypops. Didn't come back 30 minutes later. Search party. Next day, Saturday morning, 7 a.m. Bodies are found. We went over all that. Okay.
And this kid just then admits.
George Stinney Jr., the kid who is admitted to killing, was in the search party. They were broken up to multiple different little search parties, but he was in one of them. And he says that he actually saw...
You called that, Jen. Mm-hmm.
He saw the girls right before they died. He said that. Oh, I seen these girls walking. They actually... And his story was, they asked me where to get some maypops, and I told them I didn't know, and then they walked off. He was the last one to see them.
Okay.
Then the cops put 2 and 2 together. Let's take him downtown. He confesses, takes the cops out there, shows them the exact place where the murder weapon is. He pulls it out, boom, yada, yada, yada. Let's get it going. Trial, and what's your sentence? George Stinney Jr. was tried by a jury of 12. This is him right here. Look how small he is. He's the one in front. He's a kid, man.
He is a kid.
A fucking kid. 95 pounds. 95 pounds.
Wow.
Sentenced to die in the electric chair. This was old Sparky. Electric chair. He was the youngest person to ever be electrocuted in the United States. Legal in it. And the newspapers say legally. Like they've done it illegally, I guess. Legally, he was the only person, the youngest person, to be electrocuted in all 50 states within the 20th century at least, maybe even the 19th century.
Wow. When was he executed?
Well, we're going to get to that. Well, actually, I'll get to that now. 83 days later, after the murder,
Wow.
he was executed.
That's
Whoa.
quick.
Yeah, so...
That is never that quick.
Well, I mean, there's a big war going on. Hitler...
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about that. I mean, come on, Hitler.
What about him? What does that have to do with the death penalty? People are on death row for freaking decades.
Now they are. Now they are, because once you get on death row now, an automatic appeal is filed. So it's like a appeal of stay or whatever. Then they review everything. I mean, what's that guy that was the other day that was on death row that we did? The Toolbox Killers. He was on death row for like 43 years. He's been on death row longer than I've been alive.
I mean, yeah.
And then he
at
dies
some point
on
it gets
death
to
row.
be kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't like that. He actually only stands trial for the murder of the 11-year-old Betty June Binnicker on June 16th, 1944. 83 days later, after the bodies were found, he was executed in CCI, which is the famous Pee Wee Gaskins prison there in Columbia, South Carolina. Little George walks through the electric chair wielding a Bible in his hand, 5 feet 1 inch tall, 95 pounds. No final statement was made. First time they put a mask on him, so because there's people watching, the family, Binnicker's family, Tim's family, they're watching, and they don't. I mean, obviously, it's going to be a grotesque scene to see anyone get electrocuted.
Do you ever see The Green Mile?
Oh God, yeah.
Whoa.
That movie make you. That's a crazy movie.
It's
That's Stephen King, you know.
Is it?
I think so.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's Stephen King.
Well, you're pretty sure. You're not positive. It is Tom Hanks. Another Tom Hanks great. And I forget He died too. That
guy.
big dude.
Yeah. Green Mile.
Didn't he just die a couple years ago?
I don't know. Green Mile is Stephen King, yeah.
Is a great movie.
It's probably a great book too, but Mr. King, I ain't trying to read 1,000 pages. You need to make shorter novels, dude.
I think it won, Academy Awards.
I haven't seen it. Shocker.
It's good.
Little George walks to the electric chair, Bible in hand. No final statement was made. 95 pounds, 5 feet, 1 inch tall. The first switch flipped on. Remember, he's got the hood over his face. 2,400 volts. First time.
That's a lot.
Now, Nicole, you got shocked the other day by 120 volts. So tell us how that felt.
It wasn't fun.
So the first time is 2,400 volts
Is
going
that
through
low?
the head. No, that's
Is that
really
no?
high.
It's gonna fry you.
No, I know, but like, don't they usually start with like a small amount
I don't
and
know
then
if
turn
they
it up?
No,
I don't know.
I don't know how they do it now, but back then they start with the highest amount. So the first switch, boom, 2,400 volts. His head jerks upwards. He's obviously convulsing. Saliva goes down his chin. Tears run down his eyes. He was wearing a leather mask, which slipped off during the electrocution.
Oh my gosh.
Which gave the watchers a sight they'll never forget. Okay. Because that's the reason they put the mask on there, so they don't have to see that. But they did anyway.
I do think the electric chair is very cruel. Oh, and you'll know what, like, when you see the Green Mile. Oh man.
So the next switch flipped on after they fixed his mask. 1,400 volts. Then the final was 500 volts, but I think he was dead before then. All right. This is the outcome of George Stinney Jr., 14 years old.
Oh, poor kid. I mean, he killed 2 girls, but it's still sad that he was only 14 and had to go to the electric chair.
George's sisters, they went on to say this about, because they actually they didn't see the execution, but they saw him at the funeral home after this. And it was a semi-open casket. And this is what his sisters describe.
He was blue. They put that thing on his head and it slipped off. He was burned until he was blue, and to be there and look at that baby was terrible. He was burned until he was blue. Mrs. Ruffner echoed her sister's comments. They burned him to a crisp, she said.
What do you guys think?
Well, you know how I feel about the death penalty, and especially for children. I don't think it's okay. But I do understand it was the 40s. No, that doesn't make it okay. I'm just saying that
it is sad knowing that all the other cases that we have covered where someone is a minor, that would have never have happened,
Yeah.
or that's never happened in any of the other cases we've covered.
All right, so that
coal miners.
That is the case of George Stinney Jr. We are right in the middle of the case because the case was reopened on January 21st, 2014.
What?
If you want to read this, is from the New York Times.
Family of South Carolina boy put to death seeks exoneration 70 years later.
The case was reopened, and the majority of folk think he's innocent. So we're going to stop it right here for tonight. And then we're going to go over the evidence again. And there's 2 things I want to answer because I'm not just going along with the popular vote on this one. There's 2 things we need to answer with this case. Number 1, was he
framed?
Was he the killer?
Did he false confess?
Exactly. False confessions. They're like, what is that in the 40s? They don't know what that is. That's a brand new thing. We still got Brendan Dassey in jail. Mm-hmm. And I haven't done this case. He may have killed it. But anyway, so the first question we have to answer is, did he kill them or not? If he did not, the second question we need to answer, did he get a fair trial?
Oh, well, we know the answer to that.
Yeah. But so we're going to end it there for tonight. Be sure that you're subscribed to Talk Murder to Me. If you're a Patreon member, you will most likely get this episode early with the video. Also, the video should be out on Wednesday. If it's a little later, I apologize. This is a huge case, and I want to make sure it comes out right and is formatted correctly and stuff like that. But anyway, we'll see you on the next episode. My name is John. I'm here with Jen and Nicole. Until what did I say?
Until next time.
And until next time, good night, you lovely, lovely people.